In this video, we'll take a look at the Navalny's Castle film. We'll touch all the arguments and documents, tag all the contradictions.
When Putin became president, 4 out of 5 of our country's major oil companies didn't sell their oil abroad directly, but through the Swiss intermediary, Gunvor. Thus, Timchenko, without doing anything, earned incredible money. Throughout the entire existence of Gunvor, it was believed that Putin had a secret share there. Even the US Treasury officially claimed that Putin had access to Gunvor's money.
We're reading, may have access. We here officially claim that Putin have access to the money. But that's nothing. Just a small detail.
But it was not clear to whom this share was registered for many years. And then it was found out. All this time there was a secret shareholder in Gunvor, Pyotr Kolbin. No one understood where this amazing shareholder came from. Until 2016, when journalists discovered that Pyotr Kolbin was Putin's childhood crony. They grew up in the same village, went to discos together, and had a friendship as families. And it became obvious that Kolbin was the holder of Putin's share all this time.
Went to discos together, so it became obvious. You know, the US counted 210 Putin friends. Can you imagine how much you can shape looking at the biographies of such amount of people? But that's okay.
You're probably thinking now, wait, does that mean that Putin was directly paid bribes in envelopes? Yes, one of the participants of the Petersburg crime scene in the 90s, Maxim Fraidzon, told in an interview how the scheme of interaction with the mayor's office worked. If it was necessary to formalise something, they needed to come to the Foreign Relations Committee, listen to a ceremonial speech about the importance of economic partnership, and then Putin simply wrote on a piece of paper the required amount of the kickback, a small one, $10,000 or $20,000, and added that the money needed to be registered with, that is brought to, his assistant.
Let's listen Fraidzon by himself.
Строго говоря, Владимир Владимирович, как мне показалось, обозначал сумму на бумажке.
Seemed to him. So, he saw Putin write something on a paper, and he thought it was an amount of bribe. And here is fact. Let's watch one more thing.
I know from my business partner that Putin asked for a share in the business.
So, this guy knows nothing. His partner said. Let's see who is his partner. Dmitry Skigin, a criminal who said this guy that Putin takes the bribe. Maybe this guy Skigin tricked Fraidzon and took that percent by himself? That's how facts made in the Navalny's investigation. And all the democratic media happy with it.
Wait, you'll say, we heard about this palace. We know that it was once built for Putin. But then, when the whole story was revealed, the construction was frozen.
Maybe it was frozen because of 2008 crisis. Every detail Navalny wants to show as his own achievement.
What's going on here? Some kind of blue tarp? The windows are corked. The pool is closed. Building materials are lying on the ground. Workers, barely noticeable against the background of the palace, scurry about. What is happening? Why is there a construction site if 6-year-old satellite images showed that the palace was completed already? The builders explained it to us. Everything was ready a long time ago. But then a disaster struck. Its name is mold and sloppiness.
Let's actually look at the satellite images and all the mold. It will be comparison between 2014 and 2019. The building, yes, looks completed, but infrastructure is still in development. Big construction work in the central part. The pier is undeveloped too. Weird. Navalny said the mold is the only problem. You will see what the reason of all this later.
A bunch of some kind of construction trailers. Obviously workers live there.
Construction materials, workers' cabins, and Navalny really wants to show it as completed. And you'll see why.
On the right we see 2 helipads. Strange, there were 3 of them before. One was removed and a mound was made in its place. It's a very strange mound though.
It's really strange. Putin hard to know what he wants.
And here is the long-suffering amphitheatre. This simple object is being built and rebuilt continuously over the years. The owner of the palace is clearly dissatisfied with the result.
Or maybe it's another proof that all this building site never been completed, and Putin has never been there. It's an important point, you'll see why.
70 million square meters belongs to the FSB, and in September 2020 it was fully leased until 2068 to the company that owns the palace.
And FSB involvement will be understandable later.
The head of the presidential administration and Putin's friend from the time of the St. Petersburg mayor's office, Vladimir Kojen, signs an investment agreement here for the construction of a children's sports and recreation camp.
Some constant uncertainty, what they want to do with this construction site. I remember this point.
There were 3 shareholders in Lirus: Nikolai Shamalov, the same family friend, and in the future an affiancé with whom the Putins spent 6 weeks in Davos in 1996, and 2 more, retired KGB colonel Dmitry Gorelov and businessman Sergei Kalesnikov. Why did these people suddenly decide to build a children's camp near Gelendzhik? One of them told everyone about it. Around 2005 or 2006, an idea arose. Why not build a small house on the Black Sea coast? And he wanted to have something left after retirement. Everything was discussed with Shamalov and Kojen, head of the Department for Presidential Affairs.
Interesting character, probably the most important source of the Putin castle theory. A guy who acted in the Putin's criminal scheme for a decade, and then he grew a conscience, immigrated to the West and told the story to all the world.
At the beginning of 2000, Nikolai Shamalov came to Petromed with a personal offer from newly elected President Putin, who was looking to earn some money.
This is full distortion of reality. Then Putin came to power, he was nothing.
Вы общались с Березовским в Англии?
Да, конечно.
Он вам много рассказывал о российских реалиях?
Да.
Того, чего вы не знали?
Да. Да. Ну, то есть, исходя из его рассказа, понятно, почему он был участником той ошибки по выбору Путина. Он его реально считал абсолютным ничтожеством.
That's how oligarchs saw Putin at the time. And all those guys in Navalny's scheme were bosses of Putin. He was the last guy who could take part in self-enrichment at the time.
They agreed that oligarchs, such as Abramovich and Mordashov, would donate money to Petromed, and Petromed would spend it on medicine, modernizing hospitals, purchasing equipment, and so on. But part of the agreement was that 35% of the donated amount will go to a special offshore company with bearer shares. Shamalov, Gorelov, and Kalesnikov themselves got 2% of the offshore shares, and 94% of the shares were given to Putin. This is actually called a kickback, but Putin called it Ross Invest. There really were some investment projects, but not for long.
So oligarchs were paying to the medical fund. Another 2% to that guy Kalesnikov, by the way. And to Putin fund. The fund which really worked for the country developing, as Navalny have to admit. So why oligarchs were paying the money? I'll tell you a little story to understand that time. When Putin came to power, he hasn't the real power. There was even a definition semi-bankirщина, a group of people who really ruled the country at the time. And Putin's strategy was to use one loyal oligarch against another. All the oligarchs had their own little sins in their past, and everyone could be in jail. But if you agree to pay for your sins, so pay a lot for national programs, and use your leverage against the oligarchs who don't want to play this game. Khodorkovsky's arrest was a key point in that confrontation. Maybe it's dirty strategy, but it was dirty dime. And a year after the arrest, tax collection increased in all the areas, especially in the oil sector.
After some time, Shamalov, who was the main liaison from Putin and the person in whose name the object in Gelendzhik was registered, ordered to shut down all projects except for the palace. And then they tell us, we need to shut everything down. It was during the 2008 crisis. We need to shut everything down because there's not enough money for the palace.
There are no proofs of that approval, but as Navalny mentioned before, in 2008 the building site was frozen. Even this guy Kalesnikov heard something from someone, it's not becomes a reality.
Well, I said that I won't be a constructor of the palace. All Rosinvest's money was to be sent to the construction site of the Century in Gelendzhik. Kalesnikov, who had no plans to devote his life and business to Putin's palace, writes that very letter and tells the details of what happened.
Interesting thing, in earlier interviews, Kalesnikov told completely different reason he left the castle project. He said that the reason was purchase of building materials with violations of customs clearance. Doesn't sound as good as now. Then he became a Navalny's source. Hard to believe this guy 8 years worked on this corruption team, as Navalny said. And finally, the customs clearance became a problem he wasn't able to accept.
The palace was bought by businessman Alexander Panamarenko. He's a long-time partner of Putin's judo friends, the Rotenbergs.
Not a friend of Putin, but friend of friends. Panamarenko is one of the richest guy on the planet, by the way, according to the Forbes.
Panamarenko gave several interviews where he said, "Yes, I bought it for myself. I will build a hotel here." And he even confirmed to reporters that he bought the palace from Shamalov for about $350 million. He also mentioned that he registered the purchase to his Cypriot offshore company and see that there was indeed a purchase. But the palace was not bought for $350 million, but for $350,000. So this is an absolutely fictitious deal.
If you look closely, that company Panamarenko bought have 13 millions of debt. So at least it cost him $14 millions of dollars. Moreover, in the same interview Navalny showed, he said he bought the property of 3 different owners. Each of them owned his own part. Moreover, we don't know what the sum netting payments or not. So this paper is just a smoke and mirrors.
After Shamalov, some kind of company called Investroy began to manage the palace. To an uninitiated person, this should have indicated that there was no connection with Putin at all. Its director is a certain Bolat Zakharyanov, and the owners are Tatiana Kuznetsova and Ina Kolpakova. The offshore company to which the palace was registered was represented by a man named Ivan Surditov.
Perfect point. Navalny so desperately trying to find some guys connected to the government, he accidentally missed the elephant in the room. On his own frame, he has hastily shown, we see a company called Binom. Let's open a register of companies and scroll down. What we see is Panamarenko, who owned the Binom. Navalny actually proved that the property became his.
What dream is Putin realizing? What did he arrange all this for? 20 years in power, repressive laws, robbed poor people, complete destruction of politics, rewritten constitution, people in prison. We will now see the answer. For golden marble for sofas and couches in the Louis XIV style, for mosaics, frescoes, stained glass windows, a home theatre, and finally, looking inside, you will understand that the President of Russia is mentally ill. He's obsessed with wealth and luxury.
Half-truth, exaggeration, understatement, guessing, that's how Navalny's film made. It's pure propaganda. Was this object ever finished? When? 2011, no. 2014, undeveloped. 2020, still in development. So, important issue arises. As Navalny claims, Putin is stealing for 30 years. He already 70. When he plans to live there? Or it's for a family, with all the richness attributes inside. Or maybe Putin is not a villain obsessed with luxury, like some cartoon character. Maybe the interior really is suitable for an elite hotel, as Panamarenko planned. A place for negotiations of big business and government officials. and how to hide such property. Real thieves spend money somewhere abroad. All this story is nonsense. What is this castle then? What about all the strange things? Everything falls into place with Alexander Korobka inside. Korobka is a Putin biography co-author. He claims that in early Putin presidency, some oligarchs have a plan to give the building to Putin. Maybe it was form of a bribe. Maybe it was a way to get some preferences. Maybe it was an attempt to subordinate Putin. Anyway, he refused. What to do with such unclaimed property? They dropped it to the FSB, so nobody will steal anything. Then they was trying to find the use of the uncompleted place. First attempt, kids camping. Something gone wrong and construction was frozen for a while. Then Panamarenko bought it. Started to rebuild the area for his own plan. Now Rothenberg appeared and started to rebuild it for his own needs. Odd construction without a plan from very beginning, that's all it is. The only thing somehow connecting this construction site to Putin is a word of Kalesnikov, who out of business for 12 years already. Maybe he really heard something about Putin somewhere in far past, and he still runs around with this secret knowledge around the globe. Probably someone has singled him out somehow, and all this movie telling us about without proper ending. That's all the story. Forgive me for being indelicate, but if you find my work useful, you could buy stuff I made. It's a fun replacement for sticker notes with reminders, which people often leave to each other. Link in description.